What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we're taking a look at Saw, directed by James Wan and co-written by James Wan and Lee Winnell. I'm going to make this review as short as I possibly can. I overall think that the first Saw movie is actually really, really solid. I don't think it's I don't think it's a great masterpiece of horror, but I think it's a good, solid horror movie for what it is in its own self-contained way. So I'm going to give you my pros and I'm going to give you my cons. Pros. The cast in this movie is really, really good. Carrie Elwes, Danny Glover, and Tobin Bell did fantastic jobs in their roles. Carrie Elwes plays this doctor named Dr. Gordon, who is trapped in a room with a character called Adam, played by Lee Winnell. They don't know how they got in this room. They don't know each other from a hole in the wall. But the entire movie is them trying to piece together exactly the events that got them to the situation that they're into now. And as an overall performance, I thought Carrie Elwes did a real good job at pretty much anchoring the majority of the scenes he's in, because a lot of the movie is pretty much just him and Adam trapped in a room, and these two guys bouncing off one another. And the relationship that develops between Gordon and Adam is kind of slightly antagonistic, especially when you find out exactly who Adam is and what Adam's been doing. That makes Gordon very, very antagonistic towards him, though there's a certain level between the two as well. Like they're pretty much forcing each other to trust one another in order to get out of the ordeal that they're in. And like I said, I thought Carrie Elwes played the role fine. I think Lee Winnell is the weak link of this ensemble. He's not horrible, but he's also not great either. There's some scenes where he's actually decent, and there are other scenes where he's being a little too hammy with it. Yeah, to me, Lee Winnell as Adam is kind of a hit and miss. I would have gotten a more seasoned pro to play the character of Adam. Danny Glover, who plays Detective Tapp, who was the man who was hunting down the Jigsaw killer. I like Danny Glover in this movie. I thought he was really, really good. This was Danny Glover. This was Danny Glover's first legit horror movie since Predator 2, and I thought Glover did a decent job at playing Detective Tapp. To me personally, I don't think there's enough of the investigation of Tapp into the Jigsaw killer, because mainly because the majority of Tapp's scenes are done through flashback, with him and his partner Singh who are hunting down the Jigsaw killer, and then once his partner dies and you go into the present time, he's pretty much become a stalker to Dr. Gordon, who he himself has, who he's convinced himself is the Jigsaw killer. So it goes more from an investigation to just him just trying to prove the point. To me, at least, I would have had him be more of a detective instead of just bottom feeding. Instead of this bottom feeding halfway private eye, I guess, if you want to call it. But overall, I thought Danny Glover did a solid performance. The real star of this movie really is Tobin Bell as John Kramer, aka the Jigsaw Killer. Jigsaw has etched himself into the pantheon of horror icons, and a lot of that has to do with Tobin Bell's overall performance as John Kramer, aka Jigsaw. And the whole character of John Kramer is really, really interesting. He's not a serial killer in the traditional sense. He's somebody who will give you the chance at life, but you have to pretty much go through a series of tests that are going to leave you both mentally and physically scarred. So it's pretty much like he's pretty much like a demented therapist when you look at it, because say if you do something really, really heinous, he's going to put you through an ordeal, and if you survive the ordeal, it'll make you appreciate the life that you are now living. And the only character to survive any of his tests is this character called Amanda, played by Shawnee Smith. And she has probably one of the more famous scenes in this movie where she has this reverse bear trap on her face. And the only way for her to get the bear trap off is to pretty much dig out a key that's inside of a body. Unbeknownst to her, this man is actually alive, but he's given a substance that pretty much makes him paralyzed. So, in a very gruesome scene, she stabs this guy multiple times, gets the key out, and unhooks the bear trap. All the while, it kind of leaves a little bit of a Glasgow smile on her face. And overall, I thought in the one scene that Shawnee Smith is in, I thought she did a really good job at selling the emotional scars that the ordeal gave her. And the character of Amanda becomes very, very important within the Saw franchise. So keep an eye out for her. Uh, but this movie really does a misdirection because so the movie pretty much has these most for the most part it has two red herrings, which are Dr. Gordon and this character of Zepp, played by Michael Emerson, as to who could be the Jigsaw killer. But the movie really tries to bank everything on the Zepp character, played by Emerson. And in the scenes that Emerson is in, I thought he did a really good job of playing just this loose cannon, just Looney Tune of a character. And I thought he was fine too. And when you actually get to the big reveal, and when you find out that it was actually that the real Jigsaw killer was in the room with Adam and Gordon the entire time, it's actually one of the best horror twists in any movie, and you really don't see it coming. And it was actually really, really cool and creative how they did that. And that's one of the things I do admire about this movie, is that it had a legit twist that you didn't see coming. Because Tobin Bell is pretty much peppered all throughout this movie. Like, we see him in the hospital where Dr. Gordon is pretty much telling his future doctors who he is and how he pretty much has, like, brain cancer. And then we see the character of Zepp, who pretty much says, hey, his name is John. He's a very interesting human being. So we see little snippets of that. We see the scene where Tap and his partner Singh tried to arrest Jigsaw, but Jigsaw ends up slashing Tap's throat, and Tap's partner ends up getting his brains blown out. That scene I don't really care for, because you make Jigsaw into a physical threat, and I don't really like that, especially when the movies reveal that he's, like, cancer ridden. For him to, like, go full on slash mode, like, to me that kind of, like, denounces his character a little bit, because that's not what this movie has been building him up as. This movie has not built him up as somebody who's going to actually go out there and maim his people, the people he kills, he tortures himself. The whole idea is that they had to do it to themselves. So I didn't really care for that scene. I didn't really like it a lot. But I do like how that creates this obsession within Tap, to the point where he gets discharged from the police force and pretty much becomes like this bottom-feeding private eye. And this is actually where the Adam character comes into play, because it's Tap who pretty much paid off Adam to spy on Dr. Gordon. So that adds another layer to the relationship between Gordon and Adam. These guys already don't really trust one another, but when you add that context in, it kind of makes things really, really shaky between those two as well. But I think overall my favorite scene of this movie pretty much is the last half, where Dr. Gordon saws through his foot with the bone saw, and it's just an intense, just hard to watch scene. I'm gonna compare it to the scene in Misery where Kathy Bates breaks James Caan's ankle. That's what I'm gonna compare the scene of Cary Elwes sawing his foot. It's probably the most famous scene in this entire movie, aside from the reverse bear trap and the twist, is Dr. Gordon sawing off his foot, because it is one of those scenes where you cringe in your seat. You're just like, ah. It was really well done, and Elwes's performance at selling his foot, cutting off his foot, is just like, it's bone rattling. It really, like, screws with your mind a little bit, but I like it. I enjoy it. Things that I don't care for. I mean, there is this subplot where Dr. Gordon's family is being held captive by Zepp. So, because pretty much Zepp has the poison within him, and in order for him to get the antidote, he has to kill Dr. Gordon's family. I think that was a little bit forced and contrived, to me at least, and it leads to a little bit of a brawl between Zepp and Tap, which I think was really, really shoddily directed. It has a lot of shaky cam and a lot of shaky editing, and it leads to a chase between the two, which ultimately gets us to where we are with Gordon and Adam. So yeah, that I didn't really care for. I mean, it could have done a little bit better. However, I do like the relationship with Gordon and his daughter. You can tell that Gordon genuinely loves his family, to the point where he thinks that they're being killed. You can see the agony in his face, which again was really good acting on the part of Cary Elwes. So yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts on the first Saw movie. Like overall, I do enjoy it. I think it's good. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. If if I compare it to the other movies, which I have seen with the exception of Jigsaw, to me the first movie is kind of the best movie because a lot of the other movies I don't really remember all that well. It's maybe except for maybe the second one. But as a standalone movie, I think the first Saw movie is actually really, really good. It was a good first outing for James Wan. It really showed what he can do as a director. No, still rough around the edges, but you could see the man had talent. You had a solid cast, and you had a very interesting and intriguing story. And it all works. You have some things here and there that are kind of shaky at best, but overall, it's a solid horror film. So 8 out of 10 for the original Saw. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.